will occur. If we cut the brain of a living human being into two parts from the middle, then a Nobel Prize-winning scientist took the exact same result with real living humans. He did the same. And the secrets of the human mind that he got hold of kept everyone confused for the next 60 years. This is from the 1960s. These patients were closely observed because their brains had been split into two halves due to a specific type of surgery. Do you notice any visible differences in their behavior?
I don't know, you know, huh? Right.
You don't know. The prize, Roger Sperry, and one of her students, psychologist Michael Gazzaniga, began doing a series of experiments with these split-brain patients to find out how the surgery changed the thinking and behavior of these patients, and what secrets these changes could reveal about human consciousness. Well, at first glance, immediately after the surgery, these people were able to walk around and were able to do their daily tasks very easily. But then, after paying a little attention, some strange symptoms started appearing. Whenever they have to do some work or they have to take a decision, something like this starts happening with them, as if one hand is trying to do something, and the other hand goes out of control and starts stopping it, and starts doing as it pleases. Sometimes his left hand would pick up the thing held in his right hand and throw it away. Even when they were clearly shown a picture, they would either say that they saw nothing, or, interestingly enough, as you can clearly see in this intriguing experiment, they would say they saw a hammer on the screen in front of them, but when they were asked to draw it on the paper they were given, they ultimately ended up drawing a saw instead of what they claimed to see. So the question arises, did splitting the brain into two distinct parts also split the consciousness of these patients into two in their mind?
Shami Vidya, latex wine.
Now he's 20, but in many ways he's still like at 12-year-old. And if that happens, does it mean that two people are living in one person's body? What does I mean for them? Does it mean we? And what does this strange behavior tell us about the nature of consciousness? Well, this split brain research has given both neuroscientists and philosophers a new perspective on how to view our brains. Today, there are many creatures in the world that we call intelligent.
Dolphins, chipmunks, dogs. Just look at this one. How it became resourceful like humans and solved 18 big puzzles, one after the other, to reach its reward. And then, there are some intelligent animals like elephants, whose brains are much bigger in size than humans, but still, in terms of intelligence and consciousness, they are nowhere near humans. Why does this happen? Because nature has constructed our brain in a very special and unique way. And that's why the interesting thing is that despite having literally two parts of the brain, the IQ of those patients did not decrease at all. Because in case of other animals, it is impossible. And hence, bring the sin. Because today, we will understand this special thing that rests on all our shoulders in detail, decoding it in very simple language, and I guarantee it, you are going to learn a lot of things today that you have never heard before. So, in 1962, the first corpus callosotomy was performed on a patient, meaning that their brain's corpus callosum was completely cut in half. Now, what is the corpus callosum in Tini and Indi? It is the connection between the two hemispheres, or of our brain, that is the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. There are some special neurons which connect in called commissures. Think of the commissures as the highways of the brain through which information is transferred between the left, or by IB, and right hemispheres of the brain. Now, among these commissures, the largest highway is the corpus callosum, which is located exactly at the eye data center of the brain. A large bundle of 200 million neurons, that alone makes up 80% of all the neural highways. In our brain, there are a total of 9 commissures that you can see on the screen. Now, our patient was a retired World War II soldier. He suffered a head injury during the bombing in the Netherlands in World War II, which is why he never fully recovered. In fact, unfortunately, his condition began to worsen. He started having seizures, and this case was by no means an isolated one. In fact, due to the wars, many soldiers were experiencing severe head injuries that were turning into epilepsy, meaning they were having seizures. This problem was spreading like a silent epidemic, and doctors were unable to control it with medication for many years. Our patient, who had been suffering from severe seizures for the past 10 years, experienced them 23 times every week. Now, during that time, in the late 50s, Roger Sperry, an American neurobiologist, had been experimenting on the brains of cats and monkeys for the past 7 to 8 years to understand how the individual parts of these animals' brains work. In his research, he noticed that even after surgically removing the corpus callosum of animals, there was no significant effect on the general functioning of any animal, i.e., their motor skills like walking, moving, and eating and drinking. In fact, on surface level, it seemed as if nothing had happened, no surgery had been done, and after doing many such experiments and after doing real study on it, they concluded that this corpus callosotomy is probably a very safe procedure even for humans. You will get the answer very soon, whether he was really right. But first of all, what would have been the compulsion for humans to perform such a dangerous and risky procedure? Since the brain is literally being cut in half, there must be some compelling reason for doing it. Well, when epilepsy occurs, many doctors and neurosurgeons have observed that the corpus callosum is the network through which epileptic seizures spread throughout the brain, making it impossible to control. So Sperry proposed this idea that since it is spreading through the corpus callosum, why don't we cut it in the middle? So that even if an epileptic seizure occurs in one part of the brain, it will not spread throughout the entire brain. And then it can be further controlled with medication. And since Sperry was a very well-known neurologist of that time, and had demonstrated this through several animal experiments, based on the data, the scientific community was convinced that this treatment could indeed be a genuine solution that would finally free these patients from years of suffering and months of pain. And so, in 1962, a human being Joe's corpus callosum was cut, leaving his brain and right leg split into 2 parts. Now, both parts could work independently, kind of like having 2 captains for one ship. So, will these 2 captains fight over the steering wheel? Well, let's do a simple visual experiment. Take a moment to look at the screen, and you should see an X here. Focus on that. Now tell me exactly what you see. If you are a healthy person, you would say that you can see both red and blue colors. If Joe is asked the same thing, he will say only blue, that's it, only blue. But why, after watching some more clips and observing the pattern, whatever scene is in the right field of view, patients with corpus callosotomy are able to easily identify it. But as soon as they are asked what they saw on the left side, they go silent or say that they didn't see anything.
We can see here that when we flash a word or a picture, Joe is easily able to name it. See it. Close your eyes and let your left hand do a little work here. Okay, what do you got there?
Pan.
They stopped seeing from the left because of this. Was this a hidden side effect of the surgery? Let's delve a little deeper. So far, scientists knew that our brain works contralaterally. Note that contralateral means the left hemisphere of the brain controls the right side of our body, and the right hemisphere controls the left side of our body. That means if, let's say, you are picking up a phone with your right hand, the signal is sent to the left hemisphere of your brain. But the shocking discovery here was that the case of our eyes is totally different. Let me explain how. Just close your left eye for a moment. Now, for a few seconds, randomly focus on any one spot with your right eye. Done. Now, the complete image that your right eye sees has 2 parts. The left side perspective of the image and the right side perspective of the image. Now, the interesting thing is that the left side perspective of the right eye goes to your right brain for processing, and the right side perspective goes to your left brain. So, the two perspectives or views from one eye are distributed between both parts of the brain, and then the brain creates one complete picture. The same happens with our left eye. It's important to note that it's not that the entire image from the right eye goes to the left brain, and the entire image from the left eye goes to the right brain. Instead, two images from one eye are equally distributed between both parts of the brain, and then our brain combines those two images to form one complete picture. This discovery was explained by Michael S. Gazzaniga in his 2017 paper with the help of the image shown on the screen. But in the case of split brain patients, this highway for combining images is cut off. The left brain has one image and the right brain has another, but they cannot be combined. So then, why did the person say they didn't see anything, while when asked to draw with the left hand, they drew a snake and a pen? And take this other case, where a patient was shown different fingers on each hand by an experimenter. Observing this, the patient also showed exactly the same fingers on their left and right hands, meaning clearly the information is reaching both brains and both hands are able to react in response. So, what exactly do these experiments reveal to us? The meaning is clear. Whenever there is a need to respond quickly, verbally, the right brain, which shows the left side view, becomes silent. This means the right brain is indeed observing things, but cannot testify to them. It cannot articulate what it sees into words, meaning the right brain is mute. This discovery was a major milestone in brain research, because it proved that speech centers are exclusively located in our left brain, indicating that our entire brain is not equal or equally distributed. The human brain chose specialization over generalization, which is why there are specialized regions and neurons in our brain that evolved to perform specific tasks. Scientists have named this capability of the human brain as brain lateralization. Now, an interesting thing to observe is that there is a specific area in the left hemisphere of the brain called Broca's area, which is our speech center, meaning it helps us in speaking. There is also another area called Wernicke's area, which helps us in understanding. So, world recognition, whether verbal or written vocabulary, is the task of Wernicke's area. Now, consider this case. Just look at these patients who are having difficulty simply counting from 1 to 10. They are unable to find the words in the correct time and sequence. This experiment was conducted in 2010 at the Landspítali University Hospital in Iceland, where 45 patients who had a stroke in the left hemisphere of the brain were studied. It was found that out of those 45 patients, 39 had damage to the left parietal lobe, which caused them difficulty in repeating speech and dialogue spoken by others, and also in replying. This brain condition is commonly known as aphasia. Further investigation in this research revealed that specifically in these 39 patients, 1. A special area in the parietal lobe called the left arcuate fasciculus was severely damaged. Since the left arcuate fasciculus is a bundle of special neurons that connects Broca's and Wernicke's areas, whenever such patients hear any kind of speech, their Wernicke's area understands those words. But because the information cannot fully reach Broca's area for speaking or repeating, they are unable to frame those words in a meaningful way to reply to the same thing. 10 again. Den, Broca's area is specialized only in speech, meaning in producing words from our tongue, while making sense of those words is the job of an Wernicke's area. This again proves that our brain has small parts, compartments that are specialized in different things. Similarly, the left and right brain hemispheres have their own specialized functions, which you can see on the screen. The left brain is verbal, more rational, logical, involved in thinking, analytical thinking, and mathematics. All these functions are processed in your left brain. On the other side of the skull, the right brain is more emotional, artistic, driven by imagination, and filled with feelings and emotions. Even visual and spatial skills are on the right side. The ability to recognize faces is also created by the right brain. Otherwise, the left brain cannot even remember faces, nor can it recognize shapes and geometry. For example, watch this video. After split brain surgery, if patients are asked to draw a cube with both hands as 11ers. After the surgery, their right hand, which is controlled by the left brain, doesn't even know what a cube looks like or how to form a 3D perception of it. Even in this video, you can see that the patient easily assembles the cube blocks with their left hand. If the same task, is given to the right hand, which is again controlled by the left brain, they are unable to solve the puzzle. Whereas before the operation, this patient was able to construct the cube with both hands, and since he was right-handed, he made the perfect drawing with his right hand. This was possible because before the operation, his right brain was able to share its visual abilities with the left brain through the corpus callosum. Similarly, our logical and analytical thinking is almost entirely carried out by the left brain. And that's why even after the surgery, when the brain is split into two parts, the patient's IQ does not drop. These patients can solve IQ problems just like normal. And because they can also speak normally, no one suspects that they have any mental abnormality. They appear and feel normal until you conduct some specific experiments with them, like this experiment, to see what happens. If a split brain patient is allowed to solve a puzzle with both hands simultaneously, their hands start fighting with each other. This was a common trend in split brain patients. Often when there is a choice, like which t-shirt to wear or which chocolate to eat, the left hand specifically starts to argue and literally throws things out of the other hand. So now comes the main question: why this behavior? And what can we learn about consciousness from these experiments? We have always heard about consciousness. Philosophers, spiritual leaders say there is only one. Because now consciousness is not one, but is two. So does the dominant part control us and our decisions? And also, is consciousness really as singular as we have been understanding it? Is it really just one? Or is it not actually two? Or is it more than two? And is consciousness localized? Meaning, can we pinpoint it using technologies like MRI and brain scans? In exactly which particular part of the brain is it located? To find the answer to this, we need to know if these specialized parts of the brain are involved. Are these the ones creating our daily life's conscious experiences? Because if you take the brain of any animal, no animal's brain has developed specialized parts to the level of the human brain. In fact, in most nice animals, even if you cut the corpus callosum in two, it won't make much of a difference. Like the experiments conducted on rats proved, split brain rats with split brains were able to process visuals, puzzles, and patterns better than humans. That's because their brain specialization or lateralization is not as much as humans. So why is the human brain so different after all? Does this extreme compartmentalization of our brain make our conscious experience different from the conscious experience of animals? And you know, another mind-blowing fact is that our right brain, which processes memory, emotions, and imagination, we have found evidence that the right brain hasn't changed much, even in 30 to 40 million years. This means that this part closely matches the brain structures of our ancient ancestors, whereas the left brain has completely changed. So why did it happen that our old brain, which was quite symmetrical like other animals, suddenly started moving towards asymmetry? Well, to answer all these questions, we need to understand a very beautiful thing. How and why did the specialized parts of our brain develop in the first place? Let's see. From the beginning, we humans were neither as powerful as carnivorous animals nor as swift as herbivorous animals. We didn't have sharp, pointed claws and teeth, nor were we very large and massive in size. But we had some very unique advantages. For example, because we walked on 2 feet, our 2 hands were completely free to make weapons. We usually lived in large groups, now by large, I mean groups of 50 to 150 in a way that no other animal lived. And these groups had complex social dynamics. And that's why we also learned to communicate, and our diet too, due to eating meat and cooking. It became high in proteins and calories, all the factors that created the perfect conditions to put extreme pressure on our brains so that they develop and become our only survival advantage. But our brain could only grow to a certain size, to a certain level. Can you tell why? It's because of the structure of our own body. Because about 4 million years ago, when we started walking on 2 legs, it was necessary for our pelvis, or the glutes region, to be smaller for effective bipedal movement. To maintain symmetry and balance, this meant that the birth canal in females also had to remain small. But our brain was evolving and increasing in size even then. And because of this, there was a limit placed on brain size. Evolution did not support an abnormally large brain size because it was not possible to pass a large head through the small opening of the birth canal. This problem is referred to as the obstetrical dilemma in biology. And guys, by the way, this is also the reason why, compared to other animals and primates, women's bodies still have to bear the evolutionary load of our brains. And that's why when females give birth, it is extremely painful, unlike any other animals, because no animal's head is as large as that of humans. Due to these two opposing evolutionary pressures, on one hand, the brain had to grow, but on the other hand, the size couldn't increase. That's why the brain started developing a complex neuron network and began moving towards specialization. The left brain gradually started transferring its data to the right brain, just like we do. When our phone's storage gets full, and if there are 22 copies of the same files, which were initially in both our left and right brain, then by deleting those 11 extra space-wasting copies, the brain created new compartments and neuron networks for new skills and abilities. Very interesting, right? But aren't you wondering why the left brain and not the right brain? Was it random in evolution? It was decided in the left brain all those complex thinking abilities like logic and rationality would develop, which set us apart from animals. Well, evolution is never random, but always forced actually. And you might find this very shocking to hear. But our right hand plays a very significant role in the development of our left logical brain. So, in a way, your logic is a gift from your right hand. Let me explain how. See, our ancestors used to live in complex groups of 50 to 150 people for millions of years. And if these groups had to survive in the forests and feed everyone, they had to work together, for which effective communication among each other is necessary. But the exciting thing is that human communication did not start with words or language, but with our hands through sign language and body language. That's why even today, 93% of our communication is non-verbal, meaning spoken words. Or language only communicates 7% of the information, while our body language communicates 55% of the information, and tone of voice communicates 38% of the information, and the seriousness of the information. Now, why did this happen? There is a very interesting story behind it that started 4 million years ago when humans began to walk upright on 2 legs, meaning our 2 hands were completely free to perform other tasks. So, out of these 2 hands, one hand started being used more for fine tasks like wielding an axe, hammering, drawing or writing, opening and closing lids. Historically, this hand was our right hand, which gradually began to develop fine motor skills. Because of this, you will see that even today, 90% of people in the world are right-handed. Now, many studies have been conducted on this, showing that when it comes to blocking a thrown object like a ball, both hands left and right, can perform the task with equal accuracy. But when it comes to throwing that ball at a target, the accuracy of people's dominant hand, i.e., the right hand, is much greater than the left hand. From this research, a fundamental theory developed that in history, when humans were learning tool applications like hammering, screwing, or opening lids, because our right hand was active and the left hand was supportive, our right brain, which is connected to the left hand, became responsible for understanding context, seeing the bigger picture, and holding the left hand in place to support the right hand. On the other hand, because the right hand's job was to perform tasks with fine-tuned movements and accuracy, it became necessary for the left brain to think logically, analytically, and strategically, taking logical steps to accomplish tasks. This is where the left brain began to drain into fine-tuning and detailing, and the right brain began to engage in bigger picture, context, and imagination thinking. Today, we have many pieces of evidence that this asymmetry exactly accelerated when humans started performing complex physical tasks, which involved making and using tools. I repeat again, complex physical tasks. Note that I did not say mental tasks, because there is one very mind-blowing insight here that also explains why other animals could not develop complex languages or words like us. This is because no part of their body received repeated exposure to fine motor skills like humans did, and perhaps that's why their brains did not evolve to handle such complexity. This means, friends, point to be noted, my lord, intelligence is not a superior quality, but rather there is more complexity in refined motor skills and physical movement and even multiple feedback mechanisms. And if you look at the neurobiology of our brain, the hidden secret will be screaming at you. Our brain is made up of 6 billion neurons, and the most advanced part of the brain, the cerebrum, which constitutes 10% of the entire brain volume, processes all sensory input. But you know what? Only 10% of the neurons in the brain are active here. On the other hand, there is the cerebellum, which handles advanced motor control in the body and constitutes only 10% of the entire brain. Yet it contains 55 to 70 billion neurons, meaning more than 60% of the entire brain's neurons are present there. This means motor skills are so complicated and take so much load in our body that literally 70% of our brain's work is just physical movement. And that's why creating an intelligent neural network like GPT-3 is still a task. But making conscious and responsive robots like humans is extremely, extremely hard. How will you fit billions of complicated motor neural circuits into just one body with a complicated feedback loop? And that's why we are still far from bringing consciousness into robots. So what did we learn from this? Well, first of all, humans learned to use their hands, and the use of hands gave birth to language, not in the form of words, but in the form of hand gestures and physical signs, which developed functions in the left brain. So language is just a byproduct of our physical movement, and body language is the most fundamental form of all languages. Interestingly, we still see this in less evolved animals today, whose brains have not evolved like our left brain to learn to speak words. But they regularly communicate with some basic body language. As seen in this clip, this man has been living among wolves for many days by imitating their body language and group behavior. And now these wolves are treating him as one of their own pack members. The internet is filled with clips where chimpanzees, monkeys, cats, dogs, parrots, etc. all communicate with us humans physically. And even with primitive body language, they express emotions like happiness, sadness, and even jealousy. So after understanding all these things about the brain, what have we learned about consciousness? What did these split brain experiments ultimately reveal to scientists about human consciousness? Has it ever happened to you that while watching a movie with friends, an emotional scene comes up, Now, even though it's the same movie, the same screen, the same colors, the same sound quality, and all sensory inputs are the same, different people have different perceptions and reactions. If someone's left brain is dominant and all inputs and sensory information are processed from the left side, they might feel that the scene is unrealistic, thinking, "This doesn't happen in real life. I'm getting bored watching this movie." Meanwhile, if another friend processes the same emotional scene dominantly in their right brain, their brain will create a completely different experience, and tears might start flowing from their eyes, and they'll say, "What a touching film." This proves that consciousness is a subjective and personal experience. Scientists have called this subjective experience qualia. For example, when you watch a sunset, seeing the reds and oranges, your brain gives you a personalized conscious experience that is impossible to share exactly with someone else or make them feel the same way, because your consciousness is uniquely yours. But one of the most important qualities common to all conscious beings is awareness. The awareness that I am a conscious being. I am watching a sunset and I am feeling this way while watching it. Even in split brain patients, it was reported that after surgery, even though their brain was divided into two parts, they still experienced a single consciousness as they did before. This confirms that consciousness is not spread out equally like a magical state throughout the brain. Instead, the input information and how it is processed in different brain regions create a quality of experience or qualia of consciousness. The findings from the split brain experiments and their results disproved many holistic consciousness and spiritual theories, because if half a brain can create the same conscious experience as a whole brain, it means consciousness is not localized in specific parts of the brain, nor does it always need every part of the brain to emerge, but rather the input information passes through which specialized parts of the brain and how they process it. From that, a state of awareness and conscious experience is born. Let me clear this once again. There is no single part in our brain where consciousness is hidden. Actually, there are more than one conscious parts in our brain, each having its own consciousness, and as it comes from our senses, that is, from our sensory organs. Information passes through different parts of our brain, and as it does, our conscious experience emerges. To explain it in simple words, our brain is like a flavor machine. Now imagine that inside this flavor machine, there are 10 tubes, through which, when water passes, the flavor is added to the water. This flavored water is our consciousness, and those pipes are the different parts of the brain's consciousness. Sometimes 3 flavors mix in this water, sometimes 10 so, and the output, that is the taste that comes out, is our conscious experience. So now comes the next question. If you have stayed with us this far, what exactly are these different parts of the brain that have their own consciousness and are adding their flavor to our experience? Let's start with the part that literally starts our consciousness. Without it, the conscious experience would never even begin. This part of the brain is the reticular activation system. It is connected to our brainstem, that is the spinal cord. It is a part of our most ancient brain, the reptilian brain, and its function is to arouse the brain, specifically the cerebral cortex, making it attentive. That information is about to come. So get ready to work to create that experience. This is a very primary form of impulse that creates awareness and alertness, and therefore it is a very important part of consciousness. Our fight or flight response also kickstarts from here, which is the most fundamental block of any cell. Because the reaction to external stimuli is the most basic proof of consciousness, the organism is aware. Now, after the next RAS, sensory information goes to the thalamus, the brain's relay station. Because almost all sensory inputs pass through the brainstem and then through the thalamus to the forward cortex regions. The thalamus is not just a relay station, but also a filter because it decides which information is important and which is not. Therefore, it prioritizes tasks by blocking unnecessary signals to prevent the brain from becoming overloaded. A part of the thalamus is the intralamina nuclei. This also helps in maintaining the brain's awareness and motivation. And then the sensor information is passed through one major part that connects our reptilian brain and neurological brain, which is the insular cortex. This part blends relevant personal emotions and memories with any incoming sensor inputs to create a subjective, personal experience, according to research. And it's quite interesting that feeling of I and awareness that we all have comes from a part of the insula, the anterior insula. The insula also plays a significant role in primary impulse control. Another important brain structure that processes information from our most primary human sense, vision, is the occipital cortex. It contains various visual cortices like V1, V2, V3, and V4. And their job is not only to read images, but also to process colors, detect motion, and create the perception of shapes and forms. The visual cortices are connected to almost every brain region, and this visually processed information also goes to the motor regions, emotional centers like the insula, and even the prefrontal cortex of our brain, where it is further processed. Similarly, there are other brain regions like the hypothalamus, posterior hot zone, basal ganglia, hippocampus, and parietal cortex. All of these process and enhance information at their respective levels and add their own flavor of consciousness to it. And the final output that emerges gives our personal consciousness its flavor and uniqueness. This is consciousness according to neuroscience. It is not some hidden magical, mystical, or spiritual thing, but rather something very unique and special. Our brain is the door from the physical world to the metaphysical world, beyond which the tiny items of the universe convert into thoughts, electrical impulses, transform into emotions, logic, turns into meaning, and our existence into wonder. Through the consciousness of our brain, this materially and then meaningless universe comes alive. With deep meaning and purpose, there's that saying, the universe is experiencing itself through our eyes. Through our very eyes, these stars are admiring their own brilliance, and through our minds, this universe is searching for its existence. With every heartbeat, this universe reminds us that we are its most capable creation, and that's why being human is just so special, so make the most of it. Gaurav Thakur signing off.